having gathered so much evidence, I confronted my husband, Leo, with evidence from photos and divorce papers and demanded him for a divorce. My husband was surprised, as he didn't think I had found out, but eventually he shifted to a defiant attitude.
I'm sorry I hid it from you. I will comply to the divorce. But I have one favor to ask.
What do you mean? What's the favor?
I'll leave home and go live with my girlfriend. So, please, just take care of my mom.
My name is Jasmine. I am 50 years old and I still work at a company. My husband, Leo, and I have been married for 25 years this year. I met my husband through work, and we got married about a year after we started dating. We had a child soon after we got married, and then another child 3 years later. And our family of 4 lived happily together for all these years. My eldest son is already 25 years old and working really hard at his job. And my eldest daughter is currently in her 4th year of college and job hunting. As my children are no longer in need of my help, I thought I would be able to make time for my husband and I to spend time together as a married couple. Now that I think about it, it took us quite a long time to get to this point. After my husband and I got married, we worked together and sent money to Leo's parents monthly. The amount we sent to his parents was $2,000 per month, which was reasonably high. The reason why we were sending so much money was because my father-in-law became very ill and was unable to work. My father-in-law was only 53 years old then and was still in his prime. But because of his illness, he couldn't work anymore. And my mother-in-law had to take care of him. So she also could not work. And since hospital bills were also a monthly expense, we had to send them $2,000, which also included living expenses. We were still in our 20s back then and just had a baby. So it was really difficult for us to send $2,000 a month. However, my husband's parents, whom he loves very much, were in need of help. So we continued to send money to them while trying our best to save money. And I can't say this too loudly, but I was not too fond of my mother-in-law, Lila. Lila was who you might call an old-fashioned person, and she didn't like the idea of women going out to work instead of staying at home doing house chores. Besides, she was very strict with me because she loved her only son, my husband, very much. For this reason, when I went to my parents-in-law's house, I was often ordered to do this and that for her, and made me do household chores, and complained and said sarcastic things about me a lot. When my first son was born, they became a little nicer to me, but still, their basic stance remained the same. So I tried to avoid seeing Lila as much as possible by sending money to her. I was trying my best to send money home to Leo's parents so that I wouldn't have to see Lila as much as possible, because I didn't want to have to live with her if she ever decided to move in with us. Thankfully, my husband and I were both earning fairly well, so even with the money we were sending home, we still had enough to live on. Also, when our eldest daughter was born, I had been promoted, and my salary had gone up, so we were getting by. However, after a few years of working hard to help Leo's parents financially, I went to visit my parents-in-law's house for the first time in a while, and found that Lila had many luxury bags and expensive accessories, which made me feel somewhat uncomfortable. If Lila could afford such luxuries, why did I bother to save my money and send money to her? But it would be troublesome to question Lila here, and since I was in my 30s and had a position with a much higher salary, I didn't care much about it. And I was busy with work, house chores, and raising kids every day, and before I knew it, more than 20 years passed in the blink of an eye. But in the midst of all this, I began to feel something strange about my husband. My husband's workplace was a company with fairly good reputation, and he rarely works overtime. So, he always came home early and often arrived home way before I did. However, over the past few years, my husband has been working overtime more and more frequently compared to before. He says that his workload has been increasing in proportion to the company's improved business conditions. As a result, he is having to work more overtime and also work during the weekend and holidays. If he is that much busy at work, I'm pretty grateful because it means he earns that much more money. I was even more grateful because at the time my eldest daughter had just entered college, and we had to pay for her college tuition fee, which was pretty expensive. But when I asked my husband to provide a little more money into our shared account, he hesitated to do that, and he didn't in the end. Instead, he would say things like,
"We're a little tight this month,"
and I would be the one to provide more. And I was the one who mostly sent the money to my in-laws. And yet, on his days off, he would go out with his friends for drinks. At this point, Leo was so busy that he didn't converse with my son or daughter as much as he used to. And even when he was at home with us, I felt somewhat distant from him. He hasn't been this busy with work in the last 20 years or so. Having seen what I had seen about my husband's work in the past, I felt uncomfortable with the current situation. But I still did not doubt him. After all, we had been married for over 20 years, so I guess I trusted him. I decided to trust my husband and spent my days trying not to care much about it. And like that, we were married for 25 years. My father-in-law has already passed away, and Lila lives alone in their house currently. I thought that if it was just Lila, she wouldn't need $2,000 a month, so I decided to talk to my husband about my concerns. But then, my husband vehemently disagreed.
My mother had worked so hard all her life to take care of my father. So, we should send her $2,000 as a token of our appreciation for my mother and her hard work.
But when I go over to Lila's house, I always see lots and lots of luxury goods around the house. Don't you think so? Doesn't that mean she is being extravagant? I worked so hard to earn my income, and if she was going to waste it like that, I wanted to spend it more on our kids.
How dare you say that to me? Are you insulting my mother? What a terrible wife you are.
Wait a minute now. Why should I be blamed like that? Originally, it was $2,000 for the two of them, your father and your mother. So we promised each other that we'd pay $1,000 each, but gradually you started paying less and less, and I'm mainly the one paying for it now. So, as a result, I send most of the money now, and you send only $100 to $200 a month, right? What right do you have to blame and complain to me? Can you send $2,000 to my parents? Don't you think you should be a little more grateful to me? When I said it to him harshly, he just couldn't find any right words to say anything back and fell silent. Up until now, we have been sending $2,000 as a total for your father and mother. So from now on, can we just send $1,000 to your mother? If Lila combines that with her pension, she should be able to get by.
Fine.
My husband reluctantly agreed, and my financial burden decreased considerably. But after this incident, my husband and I really stopped talking. I was a little depressed that we had such a big argument on our 25th wedding anniversary. But I guess it was inevitable that my frustration would explode because I had been putting up with it for so long. Then I received a happy report that my daughter had successfully received a job offer. I decided to take my daughter to visit a rather expensive Italian restaurant as a celebration. My daughter knew that my husband and I were currently not in a good relationship, and my husband rarely spoke to my daughter anymore. So we decided to go to celebrate together. We had made reservations in advance, so we went to the Italian restaurant with my daughter at the time of our reservation. However, as we got closer to the entrance, my daughter and I were surprised to see something. To our surprise, my husband came out of that Italian restaurant with a young woman whom we've never seen before. And the woman's arm was clinged on to my husband's arm. But my husband and the woman were walking in a different direction, so they didn't seem to notice that we were watching them.
Dad, you're the worst.
My daughter glared at my husband's back with an angry look on her face. I, on the other hand, felt somewhat better. I could now disassociate myself from my husband. Up until now, I had always wanted to be with my husband to the end for whatever reason. I thought it was my responsibility and duty as a wife who had been with him this long. Even though my children were grown and independent, I did not think it would be good for parents to divorce without some major issue. But if Leo had committed adultery, then that would be a different story. My husband was totally to blame, and he was the one who ruined our family. So I immediately decided to divorce him. I had witnessed my husband's affair, but I needed to have solid proof. So I hired an investigating agency to take actual photos and evidence. When they investigated, they found a surprising fact. My husband's affair had been going on for several years. In other words, he had already been having an affair when he started doing a lot of overtimes and working on holidays. And the amount of money Leo was sending to his parents had been reduced, probably to pay for dates with his mistress and other expenses. Having gathered so much evidence, I confronted my husband, Leo, with evidence from photos and divorce papers and demanded him for a divorce. My husband was surprised, as he didn't think I had found out, but eventually he shifted to a defiant attitude.
I'm sorry I hid it from you. I will comply to the divorce. But I have one favor to ask.
What do you mean? What's the favor?
I'll leave home and go live with my girlfriend. So please, just take care of my mom.
Excuse me?
You've been taking good care of my mother, right? So please send her money like you always have. If you want, you can have her live with you. I'm sure my mother would be happy to live with her grandkids.
Is this guy insane or what? What in the world is he talking about? I was so stunned that I could not come up with any words what to say to him. My husband seemed to have misunderstood that me being silent of astonishment meant that I agreed with his idea.
Well then, I'll leave you to her.
With that, he filled out the divorce papers, packed his belongings, and left. I was beyond angry and disgusted by my husband's unbelievable behavior. And because of this, my love for my husband completely disappeared instantly. On the contrary, I felt refreshed. I reported what had happened to my daughter and son, and they were both appalled. And they said they would cut off ties with my husband even if he was their father. My son was already living on his own, and my daughter had found a job and was planning to leave home. So I put the house on the market and bought a new apartment. We moved out right away, and while living in the comfortable and spacious condo, we decided to take our time together to find a room for my daughter to live alone. Of course, during the divorce proceedings, I have requested alimony from my husband through my lawyer. But still, Leo seems to be really reluctant to pay the alimony. Then, about a month after filing for divorce, I received a phone call from my husband.
Hey, why aren't you sending money to my mother?
My husband shouted like that as soon as I picked up the phone. What do you mean? I mean, isn't it obvious? I'm not that nice enough to send money to a complete stranger every month.
What? But you agreed to it then at that time, didn't you?
Are you stupid? I was just being stunned and being speechless.
So you're not going to send money from now on?
Of course.
Oh no. Then that means I have to send money to my mother.
Yes. And well, why don't you just move in with her for the sake of it? Why don't you and your current girlfriend live with your mother all together?
No way, that's not a good idea. I don't want her to have a hard time.
Huh? You mean you were willing to put me through all that? You really are the worst. But with your salary, you can't afford to lavish your girlfriend with your money if you're going to send money to your mother. Maybe she'll leave you sooner or later.
Oh no. Then I'll have my son or daughter send money to their grandmother. They're working now too.
You're terrible. But they won't pay for sure, because they were saying that they cut off any ties with you. So I believe that they blocked your contact information too.
Huh? No way.
Can I go now? I really don't want to talk to you anymore.
Wait a minute for a bit. I forgot to talk to you about alimony. Why are you charging us $50,000 each for alimony? That's just too much, isn't it?
That's only natural since you cheated on me and had an affair with her for years, right? And that includes a small refund for all the money I worked so hard to give to your parents. So, I'll make sure that you both pay for what you owe me. I'll use my lawyer and demand for it from both of you forever and ever. So you better pay back even if you have to be in debt. Okay? That's how much terrible you are. You should realize. I shouted with every power I had, and my husband let out a pathetic "eek" over the phone. The phone went dead, and I never heard from my husband again. After that, my husband agreed to pay alimony and paid me a little every month. As for Leo's affair partner's alimony, the parents of the affair partner took over the responsibility and paid it in a lump sum. According to what was said at the time, Leo's girlfriend and Leo had separated soon after the alimony was demanded. In other words, my husband has been abandoned by both his mistress and her family, and he seems to be spending his days alone trying to pay off the alimony and sending money to his mother. On the other hand, I am living a comfortable life in my new home. My daughter and son often came to visit me, and each time they give me an update on what's going on. They are both working hard at their jobs as working adults and enjoying their private lives and love lives. From now on, I will continue to watch over my children's growth as I have in the past, while I will also try new hobbies and things I have never done before. I am only 50 years old, and life is long, so I'll just enjoy it to the fullest. It's difficult to be married for 25 years and then have your husband cheat on you. And it sucks that your own husband had an affair for so many years without you noticing. I think Leo should have been punished more. But I would rather spend meaningful time with my daughter and son than to be concerned about a man like him forever. It seems that Jasmine has a stable income, and she has a long way to go in life, so I hope she will try many things and live a fulfilling life. Thank you for watching until the end. Please subscribe to our channel. See you in our next video.